This is the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma, a high-end wired Xbox compatible controller that even comes with RGB lighting. Why? Because Razer. This is actually a pretty great bit of kit, so if you give me a few minutes of your very precious time, I'll show you around it and hopefully give you enough information to know if you would want one or not. Physically, this is a decently custom Xbox style controller. You've got the asymmetric thumbstick layout as you would expect, and bracing for the flame war in the comments is one that I actually prefer over the PlayStation style. These somewhat unfortunately aren't Hall effect sticks, so they will eventually start drifting, but they do have magnetically attached tops that are pretty easy to get off, although are still pretty stable once they're on there. And you've actually got three options in the box. The stock concave tip, one taller concave tip, and one convex dome tip, and both joystick tips can be pulled off and replaced. The tallest tip might be good if you're the sort of person who likes to pinch the joystick to be able to control it more accurately. And I know that the convex dome tip some will prefer, but for me I'm clearly too basic as I prefer just the stock concave tips. They're nicely rubberized with the right balance of soft yet firm feeling to them. The one weird thing for me is that these joysticks feel incredibly light. Like, there seems to be less resistance than perhaps I'm used to. Maybe for more competitive FPS games that might actually be an advantage, which is what this controller is supposedly meant for, but personally I would prefer just a little more weight to it perhaps, a little more resistance might feel a little bit better for me. The D-pad is very much a pad here, with micro switches under each direction, making for a very clicky and pretty tactile affair, with remarkably little pre-travel before the switch actually actuates. It feels pretty good, and a nice departure from a lot of other controllers which tend to offer fairly mushy D-pad inputs. My only minor gripe here is the physical shape. The individual directions aren't super pronounced, which makes it slightly difficult to hit, say, just right, at least confidently. I know that this more sort of combined lily pad style hat is great for games that require lots of D-pad inputs, so this is kind of a compromise between the two styles, but perhaps just slightly more pronounced features would help here. As for Abxy, that's where the Wolverine V2 Chroma really stands out. These are mechanical microswitches rated for 3 million actuations with 0.65mm of travel before actuating. That's shorter than usual, meaning you can hit the button faster and therefore react quicker. A competitive advantage, you might say. They feel great too, and they sound great. Have a listen. As for all those extra buttons, if I'm honest, I'm a little conflicted. The 4 on the back are positioned in such a way that you can't accidentally press them, which is great, but it has the side effect of them being quite out of the way. For me, they are just a little bit uncomfortable to use. My fairly large hands only just about reach those buttons, so anyone with smaller hands is definitely gonna struggle. And even though I can reach them, it's a bit of a weird posture. I definitely prefer the Elite controller's side-facing, sort of basically grip-hugging buttons over these. Hell, even the Steam controller's integrated paddles feel better to me. The extra 2 buttons on the top, on the other hand, are pretty well positioned and have a distinctly sort of clickier sound compared to the bumpers, giving just that extra little bit of feedback so that you are sure which one you're pressing. The bumpers themselves actually feel pretty good too, with their own nicely tactile click to them, not mushy or anything, with a decent amount of travel. They don't feel mushy or too stiff. I found that occasionally with some controllers they can be a little on the stiffer side, but these are the Goldilocks zone, they're just right. The triggers actually have some customization too. They are remarkably light, although if you're an FPS player, there's an easily reachable set of sliders to lock the triggers into a more hair trigger mode. These feel pretty solid, as in you can actually reef on them with the lock engaged and it doesn't feel like you're gonna break them, so that's good. And it still provides just enough travel to feel good, while not so much that you get a workout spamming that trigger. With the locks off, which is also pretty easy to do, the trigger has a good amount of sweep, it's nice and smooth, it feels pretty good, the shape is also nice and curved, so again, pretty good job there too. One thing I can't say I understand is the Chroma RGB lighting. Out of the box, it's set to on by default and set to slowly cycle through the rainbow of colours. They've positioned the lighting so that it isn't covered by your hands when you're using it, meaning it's always visible, and it's kinda distracting. Like, it looks cool when it's sat on your desk, but I think I would want that switched off if I was treating this as my primary input method. Luckily, assuming you can get Razer's Windows Store app to work, you can disable it or change some of the settings to a very limited set of settings in the software. And actually, speaking of customization, Razer has opted to limit the customizability here to a separate standalone Windows Store app. I assume because it's the exact same app that you would get if you installed it on on an Xbox, and you know, why design it twice, right? The downside to this is that it's a terrible experience, and for me, straight up did not work on my PC. It got stuck on the first "there's an update" screen and never moved off of it, with no error codes or, well, anything useful. Googling also didn't help either, so I installed the app on a second PC, my laptop, and it finally started working. From there you can customize the joystick sensitivity, specifically the clutch setting. So basically when you're holding the lower two back buttons, either one of them controls either one of the sticks, and so when you hold it, it limits the sensitivity of the joystick, which is actually a really cool feature. Basically turns the range down so you can be more accurate. You can also adjust the dead zones, change the button mappings, but extra features like multi-actions or macros or really anything else just straight up aren't available, as Razer says this is meant for a competitive environment where macros are generally banned. Although on-the-fly controller joystick like thumbstick, you know, remapping isn't. Either way, there you go. One of the other unique features Razer is keen for you to know about is the slightly different shape of the controller. The sort of bulbs that you nestle into your palm are a little shorter and a little sort of fatter than a traditional Xbox controller design. That makes it easy to reach all of the top buttons, like the bumpers and the extra ones up top too, and combine that with the rather nice textured rubber coating, this does feel great in the hands. It's very well built, feels properly premium, and feels really pretty good in my hands. On the whole, this feels pretty good for gaming. The thumbsticks do take some time to get used to, as does using those sensitivity clutch buttons on the back. Those are the lower ones down at the bottom. That takes even longer to get used to, but it's a definite advantage. The mechanical switches, at least to me anyway, feel pretty nice. They've got the right amount of travel for me to be comfortable pressing them while still feeling pretty good and very tactile. It's a shame the sticks aren't Hall effect though, and I would definitely prefer those rear buttons a little further out for a bit easier pressing. Of course, all of this is kind of moot if the controller costs £1 million. And actually, being Razer, it might just. Actually, MSRP is around £150, although currently it's on sale for just £80, which is much, much more reasonable. For the MSRP, I would 100% rather get an Elite Series 2 controller, but for its current sale price, I think it's pretty decent. Being wired means that it should have lower latency, and yes, I'm working on an update for my open source latency testing tool to be able to test controllers like this, and the mechanical switches do add to the value proposition for me. The software sucks, for sure, but once you've got it set up, you shouldn't need to go into it too often. I mean, it would be nice to have game-to-game layouts, especially considering you only have 4 total extra usable buttons if you are using the bottom ones for the sensitivity clutch, so might be nice to be able to change which ones are where, but either way, it's pretty decent, and I think for the current price, it's decent enough. For MSRP, hell no. That'd be one hell of a Razer tax. Of course, with that said, those are my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think about the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma? Is it a controller for you, or would you rather get something else? And if so, let me know why and which one in the comments down below. If you do want to check it out, I will leave a link to it in the description down below. You can also hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this one, including a couple more specific Razer reviews coming up soon. And you can also check out plenty of other videos on the end cards. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. If you do want one of my open source tools, I sell them at osrtt.com, link in the description. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.